Did you know that in large crowds like a packed concert venue that you'll most likely lose the signal connection with your Dexcom G7? That's just one of the helpful lessons I've learned in wearing this Dexcom non-stop for the past year. And I've got 6 more even more useful lessons right after the jump. Here we go. It's true. Large and tightly packed crowds like you'd experience at a concert or a big corporate event or even a crowded bar can wreak havoc on your sensor's ability to stay connected to your phone. And the cause is the sheer quantity of signals common in large groups with all carrying multiple devices that are sending and receiving data and pulling from the cloud of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And all that interference can cause a temporary signal disconnect, which will typically resolve itself when you get back into a less digitally noisy environment. Now, I promised you 6 additional lessons from the 40+ sensors I've burned through in the past year of wearing this sensor. So let's get right into it.
Lesson 1, location.
Your sensor and the ability to keep it operational for the full 10 days, and maybe even some of that 12-hour grace period, is a lot like buying real estate. It has everything to do with location, location, location. And I've tried them all. Abdomen, arms, you name it. And I've found that for me, and when you see most people wearing the Dexcom sensors, the back of the upper arm tends to be the best spot. And I don't mean the back. I'm talking about 2/3 of the way back, right over the top of the tricep. And the reason is I'm a side sleeper, and I often put my arm up under my head for support. And if I were to put that sensor all the way on the back of the arm as they show in the diagram, I end up lying on it, causing pressure on the sensor, resulting in false readings and inaccurate blood sugar lows. And let me tell you, there is absolutely nothing worse than getting woken up from a dead sleep by a low blood sugar alarm that's actually an inaccurate reading because I'm laying on my sensor. And it's also why I don't wear my sensor on my midsection, my thighs, or my lower back. That tends to be my belt line, where I'd button or zip up a jacket, etc. And inevitably, I'm putting unnecessary pressure on the sensor, which results in those inaccurate readings. At the end of the day, just make sure you pick a location that's as pressure, contact, distraction-free as possible for you.
Lesson 2, apply the Overpatch correctly.
You want to make sure you give your sensor and the waterproof Overpatch a good 8 to 10 hours to be on you before you sweat significantly, get into the shower, or some other kind of body of water. This will help prevent the Overpatch from pruning up and potentially limiting the water resistance of the entire system. Now, I do have a video on how to replace your Dexcom sensor if it fails, but little steps like these go a long way to making sure that you're not the reason the system itself is actually failing. And I do have an Overpatch that I recommend that's better than the one that Dexcom ships with their systems, and I've linked it in the show notes. It is an affiliate link, but it doesn't cost you a penny extra to use. And purchasing through that link goes a long way in helping to support this channel.
Lesson 3, sensors will fail.
Now, your sensor can and sometimes will fail for absolutely no reason at all. And the replacement process is pretty straightforward. I've got a video on how to go through that process that I'll link at the end of this one. But knowing that these will sometimes crash on you, it's good for you to either keep the box or take a photo of the information on the box. This data is needed as part of the replacement process. Also, keep the applicator and the sensor when they fail, since more often than not, Dexcom is going to ask for both of these back when it comes to replacing your sensor. Keeping the information from the box and your applicator and sensor on hand simply just makes that return process with Dexcom that much easier.
Lesson 4, embrace variety.
You'll want to switch up the location of your sensor every time you insert one. I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know what the data shows me. My blood sugar readings vary by 10 to 15 points depending on which arm I have the sensor on. So to get the best overall picture of your glucose, make sure you're switching up the location of your sensor during each 10-day cycle. And by that I mean right arm to left arm, right side to left side, front to back, you get the idea. That both allows the previous insertion site to breathe and heal, and also gets you a much better picture of your overall glucose readings.
Lesson 5, tattoos matter.
Yes, it sounds insane, but tattoos do matter. And believe me, I have more than most. And while this tip probably only applies to a very small percentage of you, most people who do get their first tattoos tend to get them on their arms, usually the upper arm, and in spots that we typically reserve for a Dexcom sensor. In my case, I have had sensors be way off, depending on the depth of ink and the level of ink that I have in that particular spot. And so I make sure to pick locations that have lighter ink and less color, especially on my left arm, which tends to have quite a bit. Now, I'm not saying you need to ask your tattoo artist to leave a small spot for your Dexcom sensor, but just be aware that the warnings on the Dexcom packaging about applying the sensor over ink, yeah, they're accurate.
Lesson 6, calibrated.
All right, be sure to calibrate your sensor. And by that I mean verify the initial readings with a finger prick style glucose meter. It's critical for diabetics to do this since we're depending on the information from this sensor to treat ourselves. And being off by 20 or 30 points, while uncommon, can actually happen. And the ability to calibrate your sensor is actually built right into the app. So for me, I wait for the sensor to both complete the initial warm up and then about an hour after that to see where the readings are. And if it's off from the sensor I just removed and I haven't eaten, exercised, or taken any insulin, I'll double check the numbers with my Keto Mojo glucometer. And if they're off, here are the steps that you need to follow. Click the plus sign in the upper right corner of your Dexcom app. Then click on blood glucose, and you'll see right below it says finger stick or calibration. Click on the plus sign to the right, and then click on use as calibration, and enter the number from your glucometer into the BG meter value space that's provided. You'll then get a message that says calibration saved, and then this calibration will take effect on the next reading. And you'll see either the increase or the decrease, depending on what you entered, on the next readout. And you won't get the rising or declining trend arrow on your reading. It will simply show a steady to the right arrow in your latest calibration input.
Conclusion.
And that's it. That's the best 6, really 7 things I've learned in wearing the Dexcom G7 for the past year. And as these devices gain popularity from type 1 diabetics using them to manage their insulin pumps, all the way to fitness enthusiasts who are wearing them to help try and stabilize their glucose, it's tips like what's in this video that become important. After all, you're far less likely to stick with something that's unreliable, uncomfortable, inaccurate, or inconvenient. And these devices are rapidly improving in all of these areas. And the lessons I've included here are going a long way to make sure that you're gonna stick, no pun intended, with your sensors and the treatment plan. So if you have someone that came to mind while you were watching this video, by all means share it with them. And if you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching. As always, do the big 3 for me. Like the video if you found some value in it, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below on your own tips and tricks that you've picked up on from your daily wear with the Dexcom G7. And in the meantime, keep your spirits high, keep your blood sugar steady, and I will see you in the next one.